Hello and welcome. We have some people streaming in now that we're at the top of the hour. Wait for a few more people to join and then we'll get kicked off here in a second. All right. Well, let's dive in. And welcome to today's webinar. This is our first in our April workshop series. So today we're going to dive into how to optimize your local digital presence for Google's 2024 updates. I'm your host, Erin Martin, and the VP of Marketing here at Netsertive, and I'm joined by one of our amazing product managers, Azar Munir, for our discussion today on the latest updates that Google is making and what you guys can do to stay on top of your brand's local presence online in the wake of those changes. So in the next 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to touch on what updates Google has made or has in the works and what it means for franchise and multi-location marketers. And then we're going to dive into specific ways that you can audit and optimize your local digital presence for this. So quick reminder, you'll get the recording and slides after, along with some cliff notes of the sessions. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll try to get to them throughout the conversation, and then also answer anything if there's questions at the end. And before we jump in, just a quick note about Netsertive. We're a digital marketing partner that uses technology to help you take back control of your brand marketing at the local level. So we make sure that you have the strategic partner, the workflows, and the localized execution to have that command and control of your brand's local marketing. We're always available if you have questions after this, so feel free to hit us up. And to kick it off, we're going to start with sharing more on the latest Google updates and things you need to be aware of. Azar is going to dive into the specifics, but at a super high level, the punchline is that the way that we search for information has and will always be changing. And AI is just this next huge wave that's disrupting and changing the search experience. Search engines are always trying to make it faster and easier for people to find what they're looking for. And everyone and their mom, including Google, is turning to AI to improve the user experience and provide the right information more efficiently. So Azar's going to talk more about these AI-powered search changes that have huge potential for local businesses to boost their digital visibility. And the first being Google's search generative experience, also heard or seen as SGE, and sharing more about that and the impact to Google Ads and organic search results as well. So Azar, I'll kick it to you.
Sure, thanks, Erin. So I just want to start this off with, we're talking a lot about, AI is coming, AI is this big wave. And one thing I always want to, whenever we have this conversation, I always feel like AI has been around for like decades. My dad actually worked on AI in like the 80s. So it's always been there. And Google in particular has always been using some form of artificial intelligence. So it doesn't need to be something like, oh my God, it's scary, now it's AI, now everything's changing. It's just an evolutionary change. It's iterative. It's okay. A lot of people really freak out with like AI is coming, but it's okay. So I just want to set that as a groundwork. So what does this really mean, though, for multi-location and corporate marketers? So as you mentioned, there's a couple different tiers in which it really impacts the user, and one of the big one will be this search generative experience, or SGE. And so essentially, what this does and how Google deploys it is the same interface that I'm sure everybody has seen or seen their kids try with ChatGPT or Copilot or Bard. Is you type something in, it automatically generates a response, seemingly by magic, by AI. And so this essentially is going to be now part of, or we think is going to be now part of the experience for all users. So Google actually did a pilot of this SGE experience for a limited set of users, primarily in the United States. You could turn it on through Google Labs, and now we're hearing that potentially next month it's going to start rolling out for all users. And it's something we really have to be aware of because it's going to change how we all look for information. So what it does at a high level, you can see actually an example here that's probably better. High level, When you search something in like recommendations for garage coding, instead of getting your general search engine results page, SERP, you're going to see this automatically generated list of businesses. And so something that's important to note here is that these 4 businesses here through our testing aren't necessarily the first 4 that would show up in your general organic results. Also, that little text disclaimer there on the right is not something that's necessarily pulled from your Google My Business profile. So this is all genuinely generated, and it's all new. It's all exciting. And it's generally changing how this page is laid out. So if you go to the next slide, you can look at that a little bit in more detail. Right. So we're used to this page, and we know that this is a big page, but we all know what the Google page looks like. Right now, you search at the top, you get your paid ads, you get your organic listings, and then once you get past the first 3 or 5, scrolls endlessly. And so this is changing now with the SGE in that block that we showed in the last slide will actually be front and center. And so when the user searches, that's the main thing they're seeing. Then they're seeing those organic results. Then they're seeing those paid results. And it's just a different, we have to be really aware of what this looks like. And there are things, because it's been out for a while as sort of a demo, there's a lot of research that's already been done, things we've looked at for our clients. What do we need to do? What can we optimize to make sure that after this update, we're still getting up there to the top of the list? And we're going to go through that in a lot of detail today. And you can go to the next slide there, Aaron. And one of the important things to talk about with this generative experience is that, unlike the traditional search where you click through, you go to the article, you read it, here it really is, again, conversational, the same way you see with ChatGPT or Bard, Gemini, all these things. And so this really could potentially have the impact of taking you away from the actual, like the website. So it's super important that your content is structured in a way that you can have that sort of conversational point of view. I think it's super exciting because at the end of the day, what this does is it delivers information to users faster. It makes the experience better, and it makes it better for all of us. So this is, again, an iterative step, which is something that we should be excited about, not sad about. It gives us, those of us in the marketing space, like all of you lovely people on this webinar who are aware of the things that are going on and wanting to be ahead of the curve, it gives us just another chance to be better and improve what we're doing. So I'm super excited, and I think it's good for users and good for marketers too.
And Ozzer, one question I have too, because you mentioned potential updates, like it's been in labs forever. So I'm just curious your hot take. Like Google is infamous for saying they're going to do something, and it's like a year later it finally happens. Like, do you think it would actually be next month? Like, what's your take on when they actually do it?
Yeah, I think they will do it because it's been a while, and also, they have workshopped this quite a bit. I've, done a lot of research looking at videos. People could, earlier on, a few months ago, you're seeing a lot of errors, a lot of things being generated that didn't really make sense. But as time has gone on, you've sort of seen this experience get better and better. And especially, just looking at the competition, Microsoft has Copilot that's been out like live for a while now. And just from knowing Google and how they do tend to do that for sure. But when we look at the market share for Google search has actually dropped something like 5% over the last year and mostly gone to Bing. And so there is a big imperative for them to do something and do it fast. So yeah, it might not be next month, but it'll definitely be soon.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. And then the other change that we talked about that's, really had a big impact is this March update, which impacted local SEO. And so this is something a lot of people were freaking out about also, like, okay, like what is Google doing? There's lots of myths out there. But at the end of the day, it's essentially the same thing Google has always been doing. They're reducing spam tolerance. They're really looking for helpful content. They're looking for good user experience. The difference now, of course, we don't actually know exactly what Google did, but Google is using the same AI technologies to really, really comb through all this information and make sure that there is genuine information out there. So we were seeing a lot, when this AI stuff first started coming out, generative AI, I was seeing a bunch of articles like, watch this video, you can generate, a 12-month marketing content calendar in 5 minutes. And so all of that, we know is just, garbage in is garbage out. So a lot of that junk, Google is just sort of wise to and saying, okay, now like, this doesn't make sense. And so throughout our client base, we obviously monitor their SEO performance because we haven't seen full scale a large drop. But when you look online and you see some of these content creators, they have seen that drop. And again, it's if you have good content, if you're very localized, if you're doing all the right things, this is not something that should be groundbreaking. But it does, again, has that imperative for us as marketers, especially as local marketers, to be as custom as possible, to make sure Google knows that we're not just, creating the same page 500 times with a different location name. And so all these things are things we need to be aware of. But yeah, I've seen in local SEO, a lot of people are like, oh my God, Google's specifically targeting location pages. Google hates location. Like, no, it's just, if you have the same page templated, then you might get hit. And we have seen some people, get a drop, but those are recoverable if you do things the right way, which is we're going to be talking about later in this webinar.
Yeah, they're using AI to catch AI.
Yeah, there you go. It's meta. All right. And then, impact on Google Ads in 2024. So super exciting also. There's lots of things that can be done on sort of the infrastructure side, and then also like within the system. So what's done within Google and what their algorithms can do. And there's also a lot that you can do as a marketer when you're creating those ads. So there's things like data-driven audiences. There's more dynamic bidding, just lots of getting more personal, just giving you more, making your life easier, which is what AI really should be doing. And that also gives you some tools like contextual targeting to give hyper-specific ads and make sure that you're hitting that user intent. And when you're creating ads as well, you can leverage a lot of these AI tools to make sure that your ads and your copy is super optimized, which is something that's, again, really good and I think really positive when users have the right message at the right time. Yeah, that's a very short overview of the things that are happening in Google right now. Of course, we could talk about this for hours and hours and you'll all be super bored, but those are the main things that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, awesome. And with that in mind, so what can you do about it? We put together a very comprehensive local presence and AI readiness audit that you guys can use to help inform how you prioritize your team's roadmap this year. So we'll provide the link in the comments where you can make a copy of a Google Sheet and then audit it for your own brand. And then in a second here, we're going to walk through some of the highlights and the things to look at and be aware of. And I think the key thing is here that, and Ozzer, you can chime in or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that one of the key things is regardless of what changes comes to search engines or how AI evolves, it's really like at the end of the day, everything's based on a set of inputs or a data set that's going to follow an algorithm or set of rules to determine an output. So what we're about to review is a core set of those inputs that you need to have buttoned up and polished, because these are some of the core pieces of information that any AI model or algorithm is going to use to make local recommendations.
Yeah, I would just add to that. So that's all super true. However, when you're looking at the thing, at the end of the day, it's been true since like Google first launched. If you can look at your page and what you're doing, and it's the absolute best experience for a human, then the algorithm is going to love it. So what you really need to do is not go through and like, well, AI like this, well, AI like that. Those are the things that Google can potentially ding you for. We saw it back in the day with like keyword stuffing, and now it's a little bit more nuanced. But I would really encourage everybody to be like, okay, this is my marketing strategy. Does this actually make sense for my target user? Because at the end of the day, for now at least, humans are the ones still, submitting lead forms, buying the products. So this audit, I think, is super, super helpful. Everything Aaron said is right. We need to make sure we're matching those algorithms. But when you're really looking at it as a marketer, and I think as marketers, we think more on that sort of, we are very tactical, but also strategic and psychological, really want to connect with that end user at the end of the day, even if it's all powered by technology.
Yes, 100%. Like at the end of the day, you can throw this away and do some secret shopping and audit the actual customer experience and have just as much information on like what to focus on and how to build your roadmap out too. So I think that's a very good point. There's two different ways to kind of dig in and go back.
For sure.
And so the audit kind of follows, the way that we designed it was to follow what we call a multi-location marketer's digital hierarchy of needs, which prioritizes any brand's most basic and foundational needs first. Because, for example, there's no point in building out a really robust digital advertising campaign if the website that it's driving to sucks and won't convert any traffic. obviously. So there is an order of operation that's needed when you do an audit, or think about the items that you're tackling first and building into your system and then layering on as you go. And so at the base, the most important digital marketing element to have is your digital storefront, your corporate website, and location-specific content and pages. So that easy way for a local customer to find information and contact their nearest location, and how localized content and the local microsites or pages are built out plays a huge role in how Google will index that information and decide what websites to show in search results. So obviously insanely critical. And then after that is solid, you should be looking at your local digital presence with things like local listings, reviews, and social media management. These are all kind of that next most influential input look that Google's looking for local business information and decides what to surface in results. This is also a huge potential source of organic leads. We see a lot of brands who focus on paid programs, which is great, but an investment here can really result in lower cost per acquisitions when done right. And this is one where the devil is in the details, like Google business profiles. Google updates their policy and guidelines on this frequently. So not only is claiming these important, but having them updated and consistent, and everything up to date on the latest guidelines is hugely influential of whether you show up on maps and 3-pack and in the search results. Or another item that people don't often know is that reviews on Google Maps is powered by Yelp. So like little things like that, you have to make sure that Yelp reviews are polished because they matter a ton. And then the next level that we're looking at is optimizing your website and location pages with more advanced SEO tactics, like backlinking or improving your schema strategy and on-page and off-page optimizations. We're assuming that some of those foundations are handled in the first website layer, but there's a lot more to SEO and a strong off-site SEO strategy as well that you need to be on top of. And then establishing a strong paid media program for your locations that analyzes your best customers and is designed to match their intent, like that contextual targeting like Ozzer was talking about. Because at the core of it, AI and all these Google updates is trying to do is provide a better and faster search experience. And so like Ozzer was talking about, the advertisers who provide that are going to be the ones who get those top ranked ad spots. And then at the very top in marketing nirvana, where we all want to be, is where we can automate and integrate our systems and tools and workflows so that we have more time back in our day and data at our fingertips to have those right conversations and make the right decisions, whether that's on behalf of your brand or helping guide a franchisee or location. So again, ideally these we have all of these things, but sometimes it's just not possible to boil the ocean and do everything at once. And so this is a simple blueprint of how to prioritize or think about these things when you're trying to figure out where to start. And it's funny because I remember the big hot topic a while ago was to TikTok or not to TikTok. And I forget what CMO said it, but she was like, F TikTok, my locations can't even do Google search advertising right. So it's like, yes, always, always the foundations and the customer experience are critical, because these are also the inputs that, AI and Google and other models are going to be using. So Ozzer is going to dive into more of these specifics and exactly what to audit and be looking for related to each of these buckets as you work your way through this digital hierarchy of needs for your brand.
Yeah, I just want to, and I might just have misheard you, but I just want to clarify. So Yelp powers Apple Maps, not I think you might have said Google Maps. So yeah, one
correct.
of the people,
yes,
small thing, but just want to, because a lot of people think about Yelp as just just for restaurants, but because it powers Apple Maps, it is so much more, and it's something that's super critical. But yeah, that's just want to throw that in there.
Yep.
All right. So My favorite thing is websites. So location
Ew.
pages. Location pages are so fun. And it really hurts me when people do location pages wrong, which a lot of people do. So location pages, what should they be? So they should be localized. And a lot of what we see, unfortunately, is that they are not. So essentially, it'll be the same page 50 times, one word is different. Great, except not so great. And this, as I mentioned, with that local SEO update, people who approached them like that had a lot of issues. And so one of our recommendations, as Aaron rightly said, in that foundational layer is to make sure your location pages are actually localized. And so, what does this mean? That means that you have specific copy for that location. What are the specific services that are offered at that location? What are the hours? Can we have a picture of the owner? Can we have a picture of the service people? Can we have a blog about specific events that are in that region? There's so much you can do, and I fully understand that it is hard, especially for location owners. You have so much going on. It's hard to find extra time to write a blog, but it's something that really does pay off, both in terms of organic search and also in terms of user experience and building that trust. Because at the end of the day, again, that's what it's really all about, is having that trust. If you don't have the trust of the user, you have nothing. So that's super important. And then the KPIs you're looking at for these pages, your organic traffic, percentage of engaged traffic, and then of course your conversion rate. And you'll see for each of these slides, we're sort of calling out those key KPIs because we want to give you data at the end of the day. We want to make sure that you're able to, you don't just have a page, you're like, does it look good? Does it not look good? So when we look at these pages, we really, through that audit, and then also in general, want to make sure that we're data driven in these things that we're looking at. So location pages, super critical, foundational thing that we are super passionate about. And there's just, again, so much you can do with them with video. And anyway, I'm going to geek out about it, but have good location pages.
Well, yeah. And so one of the questions we got was, what's the best way to present similar services and content? If you have multiple locations with similar services and content, then how do you, what are the specific elements that you would recommend personalizing, localizing, knowing that everyone is selling the same packages and things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it is like a big thing in this space. And so there are a few different ways, and we can talk a lot about the technical architecture and the hierarchy. So in general, we say if we see some sites that aren't location pages, but location microsites, and they may have like 20 pages of the exact same thing. And that's when you can potentially get dinged by Google for that duplicate content. So generally we recommend have your location page, you need your form, you need your address, you need your key information. But when there's elements that are super duplicative, have that on your corporate site. And ideally your location pages would be a subdirectory. Which means it would be corporatesite.com/location or whatever your thing is, because then when they go to that main site, your SEO value your SEO juice goes to that main site anyway. And so that's generally how we recommend to architect pages. It's not always feasible if you already have a complicated IT infrastructure, but that's the general recommendation. And to your point, Aaron, those keep your location page for the things that are really localized. And we don't want to do things like, oh, we have 5 locations, let's use in front of one of the locations and the, just change pronouns, because that stuff is not that kind of keyword. It's called negative SEO. Those types of things just don't work because Google sees through them. For the user, it's confusing. So the recommendation again is just keep your location page for localized stuff and then update it as much as you can for those things that do make sense, like meet the team. Every owner is going to have a different, unless they're twins or something, is going to look different. The location name is going to be different. The mask is going to be different. So those are the things we generally recommend to change.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Let me go to the next slide. So your location finder. So this is generally how you get to the location page. So there's a lot of fun you can have here as well. I'm just all about the fun today. So there's a generic.
Here for it.
Yeah, there's, you can have seen location finders where it's just like a big directory list of 50 different, states. You click on a state and there's 20 different cities. And that's, again, just not a good user experience. That's not how a person would like to navigate. A person would like to, type in their zip code, or they see their thing, they click on it, and they move fast. And so we're talking about a 2-click max conversion funnel. So, you go to the thing, you go to the page, you type in your zip code, or ideally, if you have, depending on your cookie settings, if you have your geolocation be able to pulled by API or by IP, it just shows you the address. You click on it, you get where you need to go. And that's something that can be super, super helpful. And the KPIs we're looking at here is usage rate. Are people really going to this? What are the clicks to conversion and what's the conversion rate? And that location finder is really good because unlike a general website where there's like a million things that could happen, there's a pretty clear template for what makes a good location finder. So this is actually nice where you can really look at your page, look at what it should look like, and then make those adjustments and have a better user experience. Again, it may not be super easy because a lot of location finders are driven by data. So you need to have a good data strategy around this. If you just have everything on like a piece of paper, it might be really hard. You might just have a list. And it's one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later, how critical it is to have good data, because good data is what powers a lot of these things. And a location finder is a great example of that come to fruition.
Yeah, and I feel like that 2-click conversion idea for a location finder is also a really helpful way to think about auditing a digital journey, or what a customer experience would be like from, okay, you're searching for your product or service in a specific location, just like mark down, like how many actions or clicks does it take for you to get to where you want to go? Check out your competitors. What's that? Like, are they killing you there? Like, that's also one of those, what is the click count? That is like a metric that can help you kind of get your brain around, all right, how do I improve this experience? So I like that.
Yeah, 100%. That actually put something I thought in my mind. So, these are a few metrics, KPIs we're talking about. By no means are these KPIs like for all cases and all times. For example, you could reduce your click count to 2 by having a ginormous page that takes like an hour to load, but technically it can all be found on that one page. Again, use common sense, make sure things should load fast, things should work smoothly. Again, what makes sense if you were the user, if you were looking for a service, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Quantitative and quantitative. All right, so I mentioned data. So SEO is a case, specifically schema, where it's all about the data. And luckily, this is actually really low-hanging fruit, which is having good schema markup on your site. So what is schema? It sounds just like schema. So essentially what it is that it is like very specific code that tells Google and other website crawlers, like Bing, Yandex, whatever you use, like, okay, this business is a local business. These are the specific hours. This is what this organization does. These are the reviews. And while a lot of these, a lot of that information might be on the page and the bot can go through and read it. The good thing about having it within schema is that you don't need to display it to the user. In some cases, it may not make sense to display, excuse me, you may not want to display, like, for example, your hours on every single page on your site, but it might make sense to have that in schema because it's something Google would like to know. So schema, super, super easy to do. You go to, it's something obviously Netsertive can help you with, but in a interest of transparency, you just go to schema.org. They have this sort of builder, which shows you, okay, this is my type of business. These are the different fields I need. You go through, you create it. It gives you this like chunk of code. You put it in you talk to your website provider, you can put it on your site, and it will really, really help especially if you don't have it, in terms of boosting your organic listings. And again, it's a really low-hanging fruit. And I don't know why more people don't do it. Maybe it's people just don't know about it, but it's something that we always recommend, when we talk to our clients, hey, like, what does your schema look like? And it's not just having it there, but also making sure that it's up to date, because you can have your schema there. It's a code block. Okay, I put in my hours, but if that code block isn't connected to something more dynamic where those hours update, it's not good. See, it is more complicated than I said, I guess. However, still good to have. And when you work with your web development team, they should be able to make that update relatively easily, assuming you have that good data in place. And so,
yes,
again,
people are scared of what they don't know, but we're here to say, don't be scared of this. You can do it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You can do anything.
Yeah.
The KPI is here, percentage of pages with that markup and sort of how they're performing. And so the reason that percentage of pages is important is because different types of pages require different schema. So for example, if you have a frequently asked questions page on your website, there's a specific schema for FAQs. So it's something you need to be more it is something that needs a little bit of strategic thought. It's not necessarily just like, one thing for your entire website. So it is, that's why we put it under the strategic initiative for SEO. And this is just one example. There's a lot of strategy comes behind SEO, especially, I'll just call it one more thing. With the March update for SEO, we saw a lot of things where local backlinks are getting more important. Again, just based on experience, based on what people are seeing. So that's something else that can be very strategic about and help you localize your brand. And just, yeah, so if what that looks like, if you're doing it on your own, you'd reach out to local partners, maybe your local newspaper, whoever, newspaper website. Hey, can you talk about us? Can you write an article about us? That's something like a guest post. But more commonly, you'd work with your SEO agency and they would, give you those backlinks to make essentially tell the world that, hey, this is a real website and these are, we trust these guys. So a lot of strategic things you can do with SEO.
Yeah, awesome. And before we move on from general website stuff, we had one question come in that says, when local sites are a subdomain of the corporate site, how do you handle it with duplicative content due to necessary similar info is causing pages not to be indexed? The canonical is sometimes stolen from the corporate site. Does that make sense? I could read it again.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize I muted myself, I guess. How do you handle it with duplicate content? So the canonical is stolen. I'd be more curious about that because generally the canonical is something that you can set within your own your code base. So you can set that like this is always going to be the canonical. So it shouldn't necessarily be stolen. I may just be misunderstanding what that means. But yeah, I mean, ideal, and you're right, and that's a really good point, right? Like sometimes you may just have a subdomain because let's say you may want in each individual location to be able to log in and get your own, have their own CMS. So that's something to deal with. There's no, one answer, but again, I would say like you can set that canonical specifically, so you can link it back to that main site, telling Google that, hey, this is the corporate site is the one that you should be looking at.
Yeah, cool.
Good question.
All right.
All right, Google Business Profiles. So Google Business Profiles have always been a big deal, but they're becoming sort of a bigger deal. And one of the things that's important about Google Business Profiles is that they're not just another social channel. People who are looking at your Google Business Profiles are much lower in the funnel. They're not looking for like necessarily like generic social posts like, hey, it's Labor Day. These are people who are like on the map, they're looking at your page. So it's like, as a marketer, you should really be looking at them and be like, whoa, like these people are like ready to convert. This is not the same as someone looking on your Facebook page, right? So it's something that's super important to make sure that everything is up to date, things are accurate, things are good content. I mean, I think we've all had this experience where you see that something's open on Google. It happened to me like a couple of days ago, actually. I went to this restaurant. I was super excited. My wife and I, she got all dressed up. We went there and then it was closed. And then we were like, well, this sucks. And now, we're probably not going to go there again. We went somewhere else. That was nice. Not as nice, but, so those are just things that are really important to keep them up to date because, again, we've all had that experience where something is the hours are wrong. So make sure you keep that updated, keep it accurate, have posts, have photos, and keep them low funnel if you can. And the KPIs here, again, is profile completeness. So this is something you can see in Google Business Profile if you have some sort of tool like we do at Netsertive, digital presence and metrics that we'll give you. And then look at how people are interacting with the content. Look at if people are reaching out to you. A lot more people now, myself included, like you can actually message through Google Business Profile. Make sure you're monitoring those because again, those are likely very low funnel, very important things.
Yeah, and I think I hear a lot of questions around this too when people have either home-based businesses or mobile concepts. And there are different types, and Google has very specific guidelines and instructions around each. So like there's ways that you set it up to follow for all of those scenarios to do it correctly as well.
Yeah, super good point. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't need a Google Business Profile. I mean, yeah, nobody needs it, but it's something you should definitely have. And there's so many different ways to list them and to make sure you're out there, right? Getting your name out there is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to use the right one, whether you're a home-based business, service area, location specific. There's those three buckets that you need to adhere to in the right way as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so local listings. This is a bit of a you could say it's an offshoot a little bit of that Google business profile, but it's not just Google out there. As I mentioned, some of that, Google search here is going down a bit. There's a lot of other directories. These are some of the big ones: Facebook, Apple, Bing, Yelp. But really, there's hundreds of directories, right? And there may be a lot of them that are specific to your niche and what makes sense to you, which may be even potentially more important than let's say Bing, right? So it's really important to be on those directories because of how people search. And this is something that, if you're not using technology, is super difficult to do at scale. We're talking about, potentially 100 locations, 100 different directories. That's a big number to keep updated. So this is something we have as part of our, we do salesy as part of our offering, but however you're doing it, try to be on all those listings, make sure that those things are accurate, and keep them up to date. Because if they're not up to date, they're not super useful. The good thing is that a lot of the tools that are out there will sort of give you flags like, hey, these things don't match. And then you can manually go in and be like, hey, Yelp, the hours are wrong on Yelp compared to Google, and you can go in and fix those things. But super important to make sure that your listings are accurate, and then looking to see what your traffic is on those different listings and what the conversions look like as well. I think we have a question there. How do you contact Google when the website button redirect to our corporate site when it should be Google? Contact Google. So it depends on what your, sort of your size, I guess. If you have a Google rep, you can talk to them directly. But in Google My Business, there is actually, I'm trying to remember, there's a button where you can sort of request a change to make sure that those things are right. And if you have access to your own Google, access to the listing, you can actually go into the settings and manually just change that link. So it is something that you have the control to change. Yeah.
And what was the question again? Just to repeat it for everyone else.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The question was, how do you contact Google when the website button redirects to the corporate site when it should be going to the local franchise site? So this would be, for example, if you had it for your Morgantown, West Virginia thing, and then the button, instead of going to the West Virginia page, went to the ZBARD in this example corporate page. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, that's something you can genuinely change in the settings there. Yeah. All right. Effective reviews. So do you have an effective reviews program? So reviews are like also super, and I'm saying everything's super important, but it really is. All these pillars are important. So having a reviews program is, again, getting more important as more people are looking at reviews. And one of the things that we see a lot is people are like, oh, I can't control my reviews, like, especially as marketers, you might say like, okay, that's something like is a core business responsibility if they're doing a good job. But there's a lot of interesting research when it comes to reviews. And that shows it's super, super important to actually respond to those reviews. And one of the things that I actually saw recently on an article is that users actually are more likely to trust a brand that has some negative reviews than all positive reviews, especially if there's some negative reviews with, a nice positive feedback from the owner, because that sort of builds, again, that critical trust with the audience. So it's really important to have that review program that you actually respond in a nice way. And it is something where it's good to have a little bit more, I would say, in the multi-location space, it's good to have a little bit more corporate guidance there, because you want to make sure you're not just giving your locations that platform to respond, but also having some sort of guidance, like, or some training potentially, like you should respond in these ways. Because if you see a response, it's, it might be some location owner who's just really upset about something, like, oh no, that didn't happen. That will absolutely tank your business. Do not respond meanly to a review. Super important. And yeah, the KPIs here: how many reviews you have per location, what are the ratings, what's the sentiment score? So what are people generally feeling like about your business? But yeah, reviews are really important. It's against one of those things that Google is starting to look more at as like a marker of a real business, not just an AI, a bunch of pages or just a fake business. So really recommend paying attention to your reviews and setting up a program if you don't already have one. Yeah. All right. Organic social. So I'm just doing a time check. I know we have 5 minutes. All right.
Yeah, we probably have like 5 minutes. We can speed through.
Will do. All right. So organic social. We all know what this is: posting on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever makes sense for your brand. So again, important to be very strategic about this, making sure you're actually targeting the specific channels that are, as you mentioned, you don't really need to be on TikTok. I love TikTok. I'm obsessed with TikTok, but you don't really need to be on it in general, especially not above other things that are much more relevant, like Instagram, for example, if you're depending on the type of work that you're doing. And the key thing here is, again, to be strategic about it, making sure that you're posting, you're monitoring all your locations, making sure there's a strategy. So you should have you should definitely have localization, but you need that, you should have that brand guidance. So you're not just getting random pictures with random, fuchsia pink when your brand guideline says never ever use pink. So it's really important to have sort of organic social program at scale as well, while giving the opportunity for users to localize, which can be difficult, admittedly, but it's something that, when you work with an agency or you work, you have that strategy and that thought behind it, you can build out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And this one, I think, is a bit more self-explanatory. Have targeted campaigns. Don't just, be strategic about it. Sometimes you can have brand awareness. Well, you should have brand awareness that applies to your brand. But when we're talking at specific locations, generally, we're more looking at these sort of highly localized campaigns, which is sort of Netsertive's bread and butter for the last, over a decade, just making sure that you're reaching those users who are, doing those near me searches, doing like in my location searches, because those are people who are more likely lower in the funnel, people you can really get to convert, you can really help those people. So whatever you can do to localize your advertising, both from, regardless of what that looks like, whether it's copy, whether it's creative, whether it's video, whatever that looks like, highly recommend these specifically targeted campaigns and doing a lot of optimization on these campaigns to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to. All right, and then this is where it all comes together. So we have all these great things. It's awesome. You passed the visibility audit. We're like, wow, it's awesome. That's awesome. However, we want to make sure that we can use this data and keep on improving, because this is, marketing is one of those things where the goalposts are constantly changing. So it might be awesome today. What's awesome today might be really crappy 6 months from now, right? So we want to make sure we have that data so that we're continually improving and updating. And especially when we're talking about running campaigns at scale, you should really be able to, ideally, you're able to compare all those things, look at your ROAS, which is that return on ad spend, and cross-compare across locations to see, hey, this is the top performer. So you can see on the top, the right there, like that person's doing really, really well. What are they doing differently? And you might say, hey, they're spending a lot more money on Facebook, whereas the people who are lower in the performer funnel, they're not spending any money on Facebook, right? And so these are the kinds of things that we're looking at, and potentially we're like, okay, we'll adjust these, we'll play with these budgets to make it make sense. As with everything, data needs, there's a story behind it. Maybe there's a specific reason Facebook is only good for that market. Maybe it works really well for that niche, and maybe it's in Miami for whatever reason, right? It doesn't work elsewhere. So we're definitely having that human input and making sure that we're getting insights from the data and not just trusting the data for what it is. That's why it's, artificial intelligence is a tool. It's not the only thing. And that's the way we really use it at Netsertive. When we're looking at our strategists are looking at all these campaigns, looking at all this data, and then driving real results and changes based on that. And it's so important to have something like this where you're able to see, not just ROAS, but a lot of these other metrics at scale. So you can optimize your campaigns, optimize, everything you're doing to get the best bang for your buck.
Yeah. And this slide specifically, this is why it is the top of the digital hierarchy of needs, because it's not always easy to integrate a bunch of your different tools and systems and have everything cleaned up and centralized and normalized across hundreds of locations. But it is possible. And so this view, just for example, this is a quad chart that's mapping, every little dot is a location, and it's mapping the ad spend to return on ad spend based off of pulling in point of sales data. And so there are tools. I know one thing that I hear a ton is also, people look at cost per lead, and New York's cost per lead is going to be a little different than Nebraska. Markets are a little different. There could be a lot of different things at play. And so there are tools out there that can help you normalize cost per lead by different markets to view those things. So again, when you can get to this level of integration and analysis, it gives you a lot of power in your fingertips beyond what you have. So Awesome. All right. Well, I know we're at time. So Ozzer, thank you so much for the insights. And to wrap us up, I just have 2 more slides for you guys. I know there's a ton to consider, but this was just one more process type view we wanted to show. That's kind of like another digital blueprint for franchise and multi-location brands. This is a way that we look at the world and different elements that need to be in place when you're building a strong MarTech system for a multi-location brand and ensure that you have localized digital marketing success. And we talk to a ton of brands on a weekly basis, and all of them that have a really strong handle of all of these different elements are the ones that truly take command and control of their brand at that kind of centralized level. So they're taking all of these elements, controlling the strategy and dictating the digital programs, and of course, collaborating with different digital partners and engaging franchisees. But really the ones that we see doing marketing really well are the marketers that have a centralized control of all of these different parts of pieces. And then we like to end on this one slide of just how it all comes together, because at the end of the day, like we kind of touched on, it's all about the customer and how to create impactful and seamless digital journey and experience for them. And so when done right, the end result is this polished digital presence and strong hyper-localized digital campaigns for each and every location so that you can capture that most local demand possible. But it's also done in a systematic and brand compliant way so that people everywhere can see that power of your national brand, but get a locally relevant message and seamless user experience. So the only one who may be sitting between us and this beautiful vision is just a few Google algorithm updates.
It is beautiful.
All right, Ira, we will for sure share the recording for you. If there's any questions we didn't get to, we'll follow up after. Again, Ozzer, thank you so much for joining and sharing your wisdom with us today. And thanks to everyone who joined live or will be watching this on demand. We'll have the materials and recap out shortly. And as always, if you need any help with your own digital audits, let us know, and hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Bye, guys.